The lights of the America's Got Talent stage burned brighter than ever that night. It was week 3 of the AGT 2025 auditions, and the energy in the Dolby Theater was electric. The crowd buzzed with anticipation. People had seen dancers, comedians, magicians, even a man who tried to juggle chainsaws. But no one, absolutely no one, expected what was about to happen next. When the backstage doors opened, a tiny boy stepped forward. He was small, with dark brown eyes that seemed too deep for his age, his short black hair slightly messy, his little hands clutching a worn music sheet folder that looked like it had been folded and refolded 100 times. He wore a faded button-up shirt, slightly oversized, tucked into black pants that had clearly been ironed with care. The stagehands helped him climb up the stairs, and as he reached center stage, the entire theater softened. You could feel it. The audience went quiet. Even Simon Cowell leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowing with curiosity. "Hello there," said Terry Crews from the side of the stage, his warm voice echoing. "What's your name, little man?" The boy gripped the microphone with both hands, the mic almost bigger than his face. "My name is Eli," he said shyly, his Filipino accent soft but clear. "I'm 6 years old." A gentle wave of AWWS rippled through the crowd. Simon raised his brows. "6," he repeated. "You're 6 years old?" Eli nodded quickly, smiling nervously. "Yes, sir." Sofia Vergara laughed softly. "You're so tiny. What are you going to do for us tonight, Eli?" "I'm gonna play piano," he said, his voice trembling slightly but his eyes focused on something unseen, something that seemed far away. Simon leaned back. "The piano," he said. "That's a big instrument for such a small boy. How long have you been playing?" Eli hesitated. "Since I was 4, he answered. "In my foster home, they had an old piano. I play every night, so I don't feel lonely." There was silence, a kind of silence that feels like 1,000 people all holding their breath. Heidi Klum put a hand over her heart. "Okay, sweetheart," said Simon softly, his voice losing that sharp edge. "Take your time, show us what you've got." Eli gave a little nod and walked to the piano, a gleaming black Steinway standing like a mountain in front of him. His feet barely touched the pedals when he sat down. A stagehand quietly slipped a small wooden box beneath his feet so he could reach. The audience giggled lightly, but when his small fingers touched the keys, the world changed. The first notes were gentle, almost like whispers. It was Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, but then, halfway through, something unexpected happened. Eli shifted the tempo, transforming the classic into a storm of emotion, notes crashing, twisting, rising, like waves against rocks. The melody swelled with so much passion, so much feeling, that people's jaws dropped. Simon's eyes widened. His usual calm demeanor broke. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes locked on the boy. The judges looked at one another. Howie whispered something under his breath, something like, "This kid's not real." The camera zoomed in on Eli's face. His eyes were closed, his lips moved silently, and it was like he was somewhere else entirely. Every note hit like a heartbeat, like something he was trying to say but couldn't put into words. When the piece ended, the final note hung in the air like a prayer, and for several long seconds, no one moved. The audience stared in stunned silence, the sound echoing through the theater like the echo of thunder after lightning. Then, boom, the entire crowd erupted, a standing ovation so loud that Eli flinched. Simon rose to his feet immediately, something he almost never did for a first-round audition. "Eli," he said when the cheering quieted, "I have to ask you, how did you learn to play like that?" Eli turned the mic toward him, still sitting at the piano. I watch videos," he said simply. "On YouTube. Sometimes my foster mom lets me use her phone when I finish my homework. I just listen, and I try to play." Heidi shook her head in disbelief. "You learned that by watching videos?" "Yes," Eli said softly. "And sometimes, I play songs I make up. I imagine my real mom listening." The air froze again. Simon's lips parted slightly. "Your real mom," he repeated quietly. Eli nodded. "She died when I was 2. My foster parents told me she loved music. So I try to make her proud. I think she can hear me when I play." The camera caught tears welling up in Sophia's eyes. Howie looked down, visibly emotional. Simon rubbed the bridge of his nose, something he did when he didn't want people to see his reaction. "Eli," Simon said after a moment, his voice low, "I've been doing this show for a long time. And I've never seen anyone your age play with so much heart. That was not just talent. That was soul. The audience cheered again, chanting his name, Eli. 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 Terry Crews appeared on stage, placing a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. You made the world listen tonight, buddy, he said softly. And then Simon did something unexpected. He stood up, pressed his buzzer, and slammed his hand down on the golden buzzer. The room exploded. Golden confetti rained down from the ceiling, swirling around Eli like a storm of light. The boy looked around, his mouth wide open, eyes shining with disbelief. The judges stood cheering, and Simon walked on stage. He actually walked up to him. Simon knelt beside him, bent down, and whispered something in his ear. The microphone didn't catch it, but later, backstage, when Terry asked Eli what Simon had said, he answered softly, "He told me, my mom's proud of me." The clip would go viral within hours. On YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, 6-year-old foster kid destroys piano, Simon cries. The views climbed into the millions overnight. But what the cameras didn't show was the story behind that little boy, the journey that brought him to that stage. Eli was born in Quezon City, Philippines, in a small apartment above a bakery. His mother, Clarissa, was a piano teacher who taught neighborhood kids to play for a few pesos an hour. His father was never around. When Clarissa fell ill during the pandemic, she made a video of herself playing, Claire de Lune, smiling weakly at the camera, whispering, "This is for you, Eli. Always play with your heart." She passed away 3 days later. Eli was taken in by a foster system that moved him from one house to another. At one point, he lived with a family that barely spoke to him. The only thing he found comfort in was an old upright piano in the corner of the living room. The keys were chipped, some notes were dead, but when his small hands touched them, he felt peace. His foster mother, Maria, remembered walking in one night to find him asleep at the piano, his fingers still resting on the keys. "He plays like he's talking to someone," she told the producers later. "Like there's someone listening only he can hear." When AGT announced international auditions, Maria decided to record him playing and send it in. "He deserves a chance," she said. When the call came back from Los Angeles, she didn't have the money for tickets. So the community in Quezon City raised funds, neighbors, street vendors, teachers. They gathered enough for 2 one-way tickets. When Eli stepped off that plane in LA, he carried only a backpack with clothes, a small teddy bear missing one eye, and a folded photograph of his mother. The day before the audition, he practiced in the hotel lobby piano. Guests stopped, stared, and filmed him. One clip went viral even before the show aired. And that's how, on that night, the world first met the little Filipino boy who turned grief into music. After the golden buzzer moment, AGT producers released a short documentary clip. It showed Simon visiting Eli backstage. Simon sat beside him, quietly listening as the boy played a soft lullaby he had written himself. "What's this one called?" Simon asked. Eli smiled. "I call it, Mama Sky." "Why that name?" "Because I think she lives up there. And when I play, I can feel her smiling down." Simon blinked rapidly, his throat tightening. "You're going to go far, Eli," he said. "You have something very special. Promise me you'll never stop playing." "I promise," Eli said softly. Weeks later, as the live shows approached, Eli's story spread across the world. Celebrities tweeted about him. Pianists from around the globe shared reactions, stunned by the way his fingers moved across the keys with the instinct of a prodigy. But what touched everyone most wasn't just his skill, it was the emotion, the purity, the way he played like he had lived 1,000 lives. During rehearsals, producers noticed something unusual. Eli never used sheet music. He played everything from memory, every song, every note, every feeling. He said music just comes. When the semifinals came, the stage looked magical, a dark blue mist, a spotlight on the piano. Eli walked out again, dressed in a small tuxedo, his hair neatly combed. The crowd erupted, chanting his name even before he played. He sat down, took a deep breath, and began. This time it wasn't classical. It was his own composition, a piece called Home. The melody was slow, haunting, then powerful. It was the sound of longing, of love, of a little boy finding belonging through sound. Halfway through the song, the big screens behind him lit up, photos of Eli's foster family, his late mother, and finally a picture of Simon smiling beside him. The audience gasped. Simon's eyes glistened, his lips pressed tightly. When Eli finished, the crowd was already crying. He stood, bowed awkwardly, and whispered into the mic, "This is for my mom, and for every kid who feels alone." "You are never alone," the audience roared. The judges stood once again. "I don't even know what to say," Sophia said through tears. "You're 6 years old and you just touched every heart in this room." Howie added, "I think what you did tonight was bigger than music. You gave people hope." Simon, visibly emotional, took a deep breath before speaking. "Eli," he said slowly, "I lost my parents a few years ago. And I know that feeling, that hole inside. But what you just did, you filled that hole with beauty. You are the definition of a miracle." The crowd cheered again. Eli smiled shyly and waved. The next day, social media exploded once more. Fans from the Philippines organized online watch parties. Donations poured into foster organizations across both countries. Eli became not just a contestant, but a symbol of resilience, of hope, of love carried through sound. When the finals arrived, everyone knew the little boy from the Philippines was the one to watch. The finale stage was enormous, golden lights, an orchestra behind him, and millions watching worldwide. He walked out quietly, sat at the grand piano, and began to play. The song was unlike anything anyone had ever heard, a mixture of classical, Filipino folk melody, and modern rhythm. It soared and crashed, laughed and cried. It was life itself, told through keys. Halfway through, the orchestra faded, leaving only Eli. His hands trembled slightly, his eyes wet, but he kept going. When he hit the final note, the crowd erupted in thunderous applause that went on for minutes. When the results came in, and Terry Crews read the winner's name, "Your winner of America's Got Talent 2025 is Eli Santos," the audience went insane. Confetti filled the air again. Simon hugged him tightly, whispering something that made the boy nod and smile. Maria, his foster mom, rushed the stage, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," Eli whispered into the mic. "Thank you for listening to my heart." Later that night, when all the lights were off and the cameras gone, Simon found Eli sitting alone by the piano backstage. "You should be celebrating," Simon said softly. Eli looked up, smiling. "I am." He pressed a single key, a soft, glowing note, and looked up at the ceiling. "I just wanted to say goodnight to my mom." Simon nodded slowly, his eyes moist. "She's very proud, Eli. You gave her the whole world tonight." Eli smiled again, a small, peaceful smile. "Then I did what I came to do." And for a moment, a brief, golden moment, the entire world felt quiet. A 6-year-old boy, a piano, and the echo of a mother's love carried across an ocean. He had turned pain into beauty, loss into melody, and loneliness into a symphony. And as the last note faded into the night, it was clear, America hadn't just found its next star. It had found its heart.